nuclear
Order,
industry.
Senator Small. You'll be in continuation when debate resumes. It being 2 p.m. Questions without notice. Senator Green.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question is to the Minister representing the Deputy Prime Minister, Senator Reynolds. Senator, who is the Deputy Prime Minister of Australia?
The Minister representing the Deputy Prime Minister, Senator Reynolds. Order.
Michael McCormack, until other swearing-in processes are in place.
Senator Green, a supplementary question. Order. Order. Senator Green, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Is Mr. Morrison's preference for net zero by 2050 the position of the Morrison-Joyce government?
Senator Reynolds.
The position has not changed. The Prime Minister oversees, and again the Foreign Minister yesterday has made it very clear.
Order. Senator Green, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. President. When asked whether the Nationals' party room would be supportive of net zero, Mr. Pitt said, and I quote, "I think they'd be unsupportive." Is it Deputy Prime Minister-elect's Mr. Joyce's intention to make the Nationals' opposition to net zero emission part of the coalition agreement?
Senator Reynolds.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for the question. This government's been very clear that we want to get to net zero as quickly as possible. This is a global problem in need of a solution that works right across the world. We need to make net zero practically achievable for us all, and we are taking action now to get the technologies right that enable us to get there.
Senator Small.
Thank you, Mr. President. And my question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Employment, Workforce, Skills, Small and Family Business, Minister Cash. Can the Minister please update the Senate on how the Morrison government's economic recovery plan is not only securing our country's economic future, but has ensured that more Australians are in work today than ever before?
Minister representing the Minister for Employment, Workforce, Skills, Small and Family Business, Senator Cash.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I thank Senator Small for the question. And in doing so, I of course acknowledge that he is an employer. He knows what it's like to have sleepless nights, and he also knows what it's like to be able to embrace the Morrison government's policies to ensure that he is able to expand his business and employ more staff. Mr. President, the Morrison government's plan for Australia, our economic plan, it is giving businesses the confidence they need to employ more Australians. And we saw this last week when the labour force figures for May were handed down.
Cash, please resume your seat. Senator Watt, I'm going to be strict on you this week. You have incessantly and continuously interjected. It's only Monday at 2:05. I need to be able to hear Senator Cash. Senator Cash.
Thank you, Mr. President. And only just last week what we saw with the labour force figures being handed down was that unemployment in Australia dropped by 0.4 points to 5.1%. And in fact, that is lower than when Labor was last in office. When they were last in office in August 2013, it was 5.8%. We also saw employment figures that well exceeded the market expectations, with 115,000 more Australians in work in the month of May. What we've also seen is 7 months of continuous employment growth, and there are now 130,000 more Australians in work than we had prior to COVID-19. We also have record female employment, with 6,255,000 females in work across Australia, and we have 97,500 more females employed more than prior to the pandemic. We also have, Mr. President, record male employment, with 6,870,200 in work across Australia, and that's actually 32,900 more males in employment than prior to COVID-19. We've also seen Australians putting up their hands and saying they have confidence in the labour market, with the participation rate rising 0.3 percentage points to 66.2%. So, Mr. President, we're putting in place the right economic policies to help businesses to employ more Australians.
Senator Small, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. President. And because I'm sure the minister's not done yet, can I ask how this government is backing small businesses and Australian employers to create more jobs, not only now but into the future?
Order. Order. I'll call Senator Cash when there's silence. Senator Cash.
Thank you, Mr President. And again, as Senator Small knows, as a small business person himself, the Morrison government's economic plan is backing businesses and it's giving them the confidence they need to take on new staff. Mr President, we know that businesses create jobs, not just government but businesses. Government's put in place the policy frameworks for businesses to lever off, to prosper, grow and to create more jobs for Australians, which is certainly what we are seeing under our government. Our expensing measures and our loss carryback measures, they're helping businesses reinvest in themselves. We're backing those businesses who have the capacity to invest in themselves. We're saying to them, invest in your business, grow your business and employ more Australians. We also see business confidence now at a record high, and we're also seeing business investment continuing to grow. And what this shows is that the Morrison government is putting in place the right economic framework, the right economic policies across Australia to help businesses prosper, grow and create more jobs.
Senator Small, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. How is the government supporting Australians of all ages to gain new skills and therefore secure jobs now and into the future?
Senator Cash.
Well, Mr President, our government is backing Australians to gain, in particular, new skills right across the economy. The Morrison government invested around $7 billion in skills last year to help Australia's pipeline of skilled workers. In this year's budget, we have continued our support to back Australians to upskill and reskill, and in particular, we have expanded our boosting apprenticeship commencement wage subsidy, providing an additional $2.4 billion, and which has now seen more than 157,000 apprentices come on board and find a place in around 60,000 businesses across Australia. That's a good thing, Mr President, putting in place the right policy incentives so that businesses are able to take on a new apprentice and create new jobs for Australians. We're also expanding access for Australians to free or low-cost training by again working with the states and territories and increasing capacity in our job trainer fund.
Cash. Senator Keneally.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham. When asked whether net zero by 2050 is a position of the Morrison government, the Minister for Foreign Affairs said on Insiders on Sunday, and I quote, "It is the clear position that the PM has articulated." Is net zero by 2050 a position of the Morrison-Joyce government? Yes or no?
The Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr President, and I thank Senator Keneally for her question. Indeed, as the Prime Minister has made clear, it is important for Australia to drive towards net zero emissions, to play its role in terms of the development of new technologies, to invest in technologies, not taxes, as those opposite would have, to make sure that in doing so, Australia, which has been such a crucial leader in relation to energy sources in the past, continues to be a crucial leader in the delivery of energy sources now and into the future. That's why, Mr President, whilst at the G7 and associated meetings, the Prime Minister was furthering on the policy commitments made in terms of the pursuit of hydrogen hubs around the country, the pursuit of the target, the stretch target to achieve hydrogen delivered at $2 per kilogram, and to make sure that we have strong international partnerships in that regard. The Prime Minister pursued agreements whilst overseas and signed them with Germany and Singapore for hydrogen cooperation with those key economies and key investors in Australia,
Senator
as
Green.
we have done and pursued with Japan as well. And it's this type of investment by coalition governments that has enabled Australia to reduce its emissions, not with the taxes of those proposed opposite.
Senator Birmingham, I have Senator Keneally on a point of order. Senator Keneally.
Thank you. Relevance. The question was fairly tight and clear. Is net zero a position of the Morrison-Joyce government? Yes or no?
I can't instruct a minister the terms in which he or she must answer the question. As long as the minister is directly relevant to it, and I think the minister is clearly being directly relevant to it, there's a chance after question time to debate ministers' answers. Senator Birmingham.
Mr President, Australia beat its Kyoto-era targets by some 459 million tonnes. Australians' emissions are down over 20% from the period 2005 to December 2020, and that's compared with an OECD average of 6.6%. This is what achieves a pathway to net zero, by achieving real emissions reductions through real investment in real technologies.
Order. Order. Senator Keneally, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Payne also said that net zero by 2050 is, quote, the broad position of the Australian government and, quote, a sensible position. Is net zero by 2050 a position that was agreed by the Morrison-McCormack cabinet? If so, will it be revised by the Morrison-Joyce cabinet?
You bet your bottom.
Senator Birmingham.
Mr President, it is a sensible position. It is a sensible position and it is an important position for Australia to play our role, but most crucially for Australia to ensure that we continue to drive the investment and attract the investment in the technologies that will get us towards net zero, but do so whilst protecting the jobs and businesses and livelihoods of Australians. And that will forever remain the coalition government's priority, the protection of jobs and businesses across Australia, ensuring that we make sure those businesses can operate with the technology, with the support, with the investment.
Senator Wong on a point of order.
Mr President, the point of order is direct relevance, and I understand the position you have previously articulated. Senator Keneally's question, though, was a direct question about what the position of the cabinet was, and the minister saying, giving us a long lecture about how you might approach a target, that when the question is only whether or not the target is his government's position. I mean, we are having a discussion about direct relevance on a question to the Leader of the Government in the Senate about what the government's position is.
I allowed you to remind the minister of the second part. I thought the minister engaged with that at the start. He's got 16 seconds remaining, but he is also entitled to address the quotation that was used in the question and remain directly relevant to the question. Senator Birmingham.
Mr President, I was asked whether it was a sensible position, and I said—
Order. Senator Keneally.
I'm sorry, direct relevance. The minister says he was asked if it was a sensible position. He was not. He was asked if it was a position of his government.
I allowed the Leader of the Opposition to restate the question in some detail. The minister is entitled to address any or all parts of a question. Senator Birmingham.
I was asked whether the position, as articulated by the Foreign Minister, that it was a sensible position, is the government's position. Of course it is the government's position, Mr President. Of course it is, and the government is determined to make sure we continue to drive investment
time for the answer has expired. Senator Keneally, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. In an op-ed in The Australian in February, Nationals leader Barnaby Joyce wrote, and I quote, "The Nationals have always been opposed to a net zero target. If the Nationals supported net zero emissions, we would cease to be a party that could credibly represent farmers." Will Mr Morrison rule out abandoning his preference for net zero emissions by 2050 in any revised coalition agreement?
Senator Birmingham.
Well, Mr President, the Prime Minister has made clear the government's position. I am confident the government's position in relation to supporting investment in driving towards net zero and seeking to achieve that, as quickly as is possible and practical, whilst not applying taxes like those opposite would, whilst instead investing in the technologies that are necessary to get those outcomes, remains indeed the position. Now, I note the new Leader of the Nationals was asked about this very matter in his press conference just immediately prior to question time, and Mr Joyce made clear that he'd be consulting with his party room, having discussions with the Prime Minister. But I assure the Senate and Senator Keneally as well, Mr President, The government has made clear and the Prime Minister has made clear Australia's position in international discussions to the Australian people. That remains the position, Mr President.
Senator Scarr.
Mr President, my question is to Australia's outstanding Minister for Superannuation, Financial Services and the Digital Economy, Senator Hume. Can the minister outline to the Senate what the Morrison government has done to ensure superannuation works harder for all Australians?
The Minister for Superannuation, Financial Services and the Digital Economy, Senator Hume.
Thank you very much, Mr President, and I thank Senator Scarr for this very important question. Mr President, the Australian superannuation system manages over $3 trillion in retirement savings on behalf of 16 million Australians. Australians pay around $30 billion a year in superannuation fees, more than the $27 million that households spend on energy bills and the $12 billion that they spend on water bills. Those on this side of the chamber are ensuring that superannuation works harder for all Australians. All reforms since coming to government have been putting billions back into the pockets of Australians' retirement, giving Australians choice and making the superannuation system transparent for the first time, protecting your super, capping fees on low balances and reuniting small and inactive accounts to active ones, putting members' interests first, removing inappropriate insurances from young people that erodes their balances. And now I'm very proud that we have passed the Your Future, Your Super package, opposed by those opposite, that will create efficiencies, reduce costs and remove duplication in the superannuation system. The package is the Morrison government's next step towards modernising and improving the superannuation system to ensure that it works harder for all Australians. Treasury estimate that this package will add around $17.9 billion to Australians' superannuation balances over the next decade, and it will do so in 4 ways. When you change job, your superannuation will follow you. A new online super comparison tool covering performance and fees will make it easier to find the best super fund for you. There will be clear standards for performance, and when clarifying that funds have to act in your best financial interest. For too long, some funds have relied on people not knowing what they're up to. With the Morrison government's reforms, they won't be able to get away with the rip-off any longer.
Senator Hume. Senator Scarr, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Can the minister inform the Senate what the government has done to ensure Australians are not forced into duplicate accounts?
Senator Hume.
Thank you, Mr President. The Treasury estimates that around 6 million multiple accounts are held by 4.4 million Australians. Now, to address this, from the 1st of November 2021, when you change jobs, your superannuation fund will move with you. And if you don't know your superannuation details, your employer will check with the ATO to find your active super account. So no more accidentally doubling up your fees, doubling up your insurance premiums and losing money to super accounts that you didn't even know existed. It's important to note, Mr President, that thanks to the coalition government, you still have choice. You will always have choice. Your super fund will now move with you, but you have the option to change that fund at any time. If your fund is underperforming, you can seek a fund with lower fees. You're able to do this. Your employer can't stop you, and nor will this measure. Treasury estimates that this change will increase superannuation savings by around $2.8 billion over the next decade, straight back into the retirement funds of hard-working Australians.
Senator Scarr, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Can the minister advise the Senate what the government is doing to hold underperforming accounts or funds to account?
Senator Hume.
Mr President, super funds have an important job, and that is to grow Australians' retirement savings. Though all too often, when a fund has underperformed, members either don't find out about it or they don't know that they're underperforming. They've been able to hide behind the skirts of the good-performing funds. In fact, around $100 billion of Australians' money is in underperforming superannuation products, and around 3 million superannuation accounts are in underperforming superannuation products. The Productivity Commission estimates that once Your Future, Your Super measures kick in, approximately 25 of the current 80 or so MySuper products will fail the performance test. Mr President, the Labor Party may have introduced superannuation to Australia, but by goodness, it's taken a coalition government to make it work in the interest of members rather than super fund managers.
Senator Siewert.
Thank you, Mr President.
Order. Order on my left. Senator Siewert.
Thank you, Mr President. Mr President, my question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Birmingham. The proposed changes to Standard 3 of the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profit Commission regulation of 2013 have been labelled by the Law Council as unnecessary and cumbersome and inconsistent with the objects of the ACNC Act. Others say these regulations will have a chilling effect on the lawful policy advocacy by charities. They will bury them in red tape and stop charities from working to improve the lives of Australians. Why is the government making these changes? Why shouldn't the sector see this as an attack on the ability for them to advocate?
The Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Birmingham.
I thank Mr. President. I thank Senator Siewert for her question. It is always nice to get a detailed policy question, although sometimes when it is particularly precise detail, it can be a challenge to be able to provide the granular information that the senator may wish to receive in response initially. Mr. President, look, I'll take the senator's question on notice and provide a swift response to the chamber for her.
Senator Siewert, a supplementary question.
I thought that was a fairly simple question. It was about why are you doing it? The government claims this is implementing the recommendations of the ACNC expert panel, when the panel actually explicitly recommended that that standard be repealed. How is this implementing the recommendation if the council said, or the expert panel said, it should be repealed?
Senator Birmingham.
Well, thanks, Mr. President. I'm sorry for Senator Siewert, but I don't have a copy of the recommendation in front of me, or indeed the detail in terms of the response. I am happy to provide for the senator as much information as I can on notice in relation to the specific issue that she has raised, and will endeavour to do so as promptly as we can.
Senator Siewert, a final supplementary question.
The proposed changes allow the ACNC Commissioner to make judgments on potentially unlawful activities by charities. If a charity breaks the law, shouldn't it be dealt with under the criminal law and, in fact, under Standard 5?
Senator Birmingham.
Well, Mr. President, I mean, certainly if laws are broken, then it ought to be handled under criminal law. Equally, if laws are broken in the administration and operation of a charity, then I would imagine that Australians would expect there should be consequences for the operation of the charity itself as well. So, Mr. President, again, I'm happy to provide further detail in responding to Senator Siewert, given I don't have full information on the specific issues she's raised before me. However, I appreciate Senator Siewert would like to debate the issue right now, and I apologise to her that I don't have the information that she would wish to detail right now, but I will undertake, as I have, to make sure I provide those details back to the chamber.
Senator Walsh.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Health, Senator Colbeck. Today, the Prime Minister held an emergency National Cabinet meeting with the sole agenda item being the COVID-19 vaccine rollout. Liberal New South Wales Premier Berejiklian has said she will request more supply of vaccines from the Commonwealth, saying, and I quote, "If we had more doses of Pfizer, we could get them out through our New South Wales state government mass vaccination hubs." Why has the Morrison government failed to ensure enough supply of Pfizer doses in New South Wales, which is now facing a new COVID-19 outbreak?
Minister representing the Minister for Health and Aged Care, Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank the Senator for the question. Senator is correct. There was a National Cabinet meeting held this morning with the primary issue on the agenda, the national vaccine rollout, Mr. President. And at that meeting this morning, the Coordinator General of Operation COVID Shield, Lieutenant General Fruin, provided each state and territory with planning projections of Pfizer and AstraZeneca doses for their jurisdictions over the remainder of this year, Mr. President, so that the states and territories can effectively plan their vaccine rollout, Mr. President. The Coordinator-General confirmed that Pfizer COVID-19 vaccinations allocations are being provided on a proportional population basis, so that each state and territory, Mr. President, and the government remains on track to offer every eligible Australian a first dose of a COVID-19 vaccine by the end of 2021.
Senator Walsh, a supplementary question.
Victoria's acting Premier James Merlino has warned the country is headed into winter without enough supply of COVID-19 vaccines and has slammed the national vaccine rollout as an, and I quote, absolute shambles. Can the minister guarantee that the Morrison government will supply sufficient doses to meet demand for each week through July?
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks, Senator, for the question. As I've just indicated, state premiers and territory leaders were updated this morning on the supply projections for COVID-19 vaccines out to the end of 2021. Mr. President, the state leaders agreed that they would continue to prioritise Category 1A and 1B and people seeking vaccines during that period of time, Mr. President, Mr. President, we will continue to work cooperatively with the states and territories on the national vaccine rollout to ensure that Australians, as we've indicated, have the opportunity to get a first dose of the vaccine by the end of 2021.
Senator Walsh, a final supplementary question.
When New South Wales and Victoria are experiencing COVID-19 outbreaks and the Morrison government's vaccine rollout is an absolute shambles, why is the Morrison-Joyce government more focused on rolling each other than rolling out the vaccine?
Senator Colbeck. Order. Order.
Mr. President.
Order. Senator Colbeck, I'll ask you to resume your seat till the chamber extends a courtesy of silence to you on both sides. Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr. President. As is clearly demonstrated by the Prime Minister calling a National Cabinet meeting this morning to specifically discuss the vaccine rollout, demonstrates the Prime Minister and the government's focus on the vaccine rollout. That was the point of having the meeting, to discuss with the states and territories the rollout of the vaccination process, Mr. President. And we will continue to maintain that focus, Mr. President. The Prime Minister will continue to maintain that focus. The whole purpose of the discussion this morning was to ensure that the states and territories had the information available to them that they needed to coordinate the supply and the rollout of the vaccination process, so that every Australian who wants a vaccine by the end of the year can get one.
Senator Hanson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. My question is to Senator Reynolds as Minister for the National Disability Insurance Scheme. Minister, in 2011, the Productivity Commission estimated a national disability insurance scheme would cover 411,000 participants at a gross cost of $13.6 billion when fully implemented. A 0.5 percentage point rise in the Medicare levy was introduced in the 2013 budget to help fund it. It is now forecast that the cost of the scheme will rise to a staggering $30 billion plus by 2024-25, with a projected 530,000 participants costing more than Medicare costs for the whole nation, and could blow out to $130 billion by the 2030s. Minister, what is the government going to do to rein in the cost of the NDIS so that it is sustainable and affordable to taxpayers?
Order. The Minister for the National Disability Insurance Scheme, Senator Reynolds.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President, and I thank Senator Hanson for her question, and I also thank her for her passion and commitment to this extraordinary, globally unique scheme. The Australian government is ensuring that this world-first scheme And remember, this is a scheme for people with significant and permanent disabilities, and we are doing everything we can to ensure that that continues for many generations to come. Today, there are 450,000 Australians on the NDIS, 50% of those for the first time. And as Senator Hanson has said, that is a significant increase over what was anticipated in 2011, both in terms of the number of participants and the average cost of the packages. So not only have we seen more people enter the scheme, which again I think says so much about the goodness in Australians, their heart and their ability and their commitment to pay for this, but it also does mean that we have sustainability issues now with the scheme, Senator Hanson. So the average payment per participant has increased by almost 48% over the last 3 years alone, and that is a 12.5% increase every year, which, as all of us in this chamber know, is not a sustainable growth trajectory for the taxpayers into the future. Now, the NDIS will always be fully funded under the Morrison government, which is why over the last 2 budgets alone we have made a commitment of an additional $17.1 billion, $17,000 million, to actually fully fund the NDIS over the forward estimates. And this takes the total investment in the NDIS to $121 billion over the next 4 years, which, as Senator Hanson has said, will make it more expensive now for taxpayers than Medicare.
Senator Reynolds. Senator Hanson, a supplementary question.
Thank you very much. Unlike other government benefits, there is no means testing of recipients of NDIS assistance. Is it fair that people on other benefits are means tested while people on NDIS, regardless of income or wealth, are not?
Senator Reynolds.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President, and again thank you, Senator Hanson, for the question. It's important for everybody in this chamber and also for those watching or listening to realise that the NDIS is a social insurance scheme and it is not a welfare scheme. The NDIS is a way of providing individualised support for people with disabilities, their families and also their carers. This means support provided are related to a person's disability and the support that they need, and it's not directly related to their capacity to pay for support. Now, the NDIS was based on the principles of fairness and equality, meaning that your postcode or your socio-economic circumstances or your means to pay for medical reports should not matter. But sadly, today it still does, and we have much work to do together to actually make sure that that's the case. For example, in the Senator's own home state of Queensland, the average planned budget is $76,000, while in Brisbane, $88,000.
Senator Hanson, a final supplementary question.
Thank you. Minister, I've been advised that under current arrangements, sex worker therapy, that's prostitutes, could cost the taxpayer anything between $400 million and $2 billion each year. Minister, if this is correct, what is the hourly rate for this service? Because I've got the current price guide and I can't find where it costs an hourly rate for it as a prostitute. So could you please advise, could that be the cost to the taxpayers, and what are we paying
Senator
an hour?
Hanson. Senator Reynolds.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and again thank you, Senator, for the question. My predecessor, the Minister for the NDIS, has already discussed this issue at some length and clarified the government's position on this. We do not believe that the use of taxpayer NDIS funds should be used for the service of a sex worker, because we don't believe that is in line with community expectations. Nor should the NDIS pay for what might otherwise be considered an ordinary living expense. We do recognise that people with disability should be supported to have control over and choices about access to service that pertain to their sexuality to enable them to live an ordinary life. However, should an NDIS participant feel that they need to purchase such services, it should be purchased using their personal income. Reasonable and necessary support must come, we believe, with some boundaries. And I notice that this has bipartisan support, and that Mr Shorten has recently endorsed the government's approach on this position.
Time for the answer has expired. Senator Van.
Thank you. And my question is also to the Minister for the National Disability Insurance Scheme, Senator Reynolds. Can the Minister please update the Senate on how the Morrison government is supporting people with motor neurone disease through the National Disability Insurance Scheme?
The Minister for the National Disability Insurance Scheme, Senator Reynolds.
Thank you very much, Mr President, and I thank Senator Van for his question on this most important of issues, and one that I know unites everybody in this chamber. Today is Motor Neuron Disease Global Day, and on today we recognise and we also shine a light on motor neuron disease, a cruel and unrelenting degenerative disease. MND is represented by a blue cornflower, which is a symbol of hope, a fragile appearance but hardy in nature. This morning I attended the MND Global Day event here in Parliament House. There I had the privilege to hear Sharon and Peter share their personal journeys with MDS. 7-year-old Harrison did a wonderful job speaking on behalf of his mother, Sharon, who no longer is able personally to share her story. Sharon shared her journey since diagnosis at the age of only 34 on her life, her work, her aspirations for herself and a family. Sharon herself described her journey with MND as a nightmare, a journey in which she is seeking as much control as possible so she can provide as normal a life as possible for her husband Adam and for her sons Harrison and Hayden. Peter spoke of the need for hope despite being diagnosed with MSD, and how he could maximise control of his life and also the quality of life for him and his family. Now, hope for a cure still remains so elusive, which means we must keep working together to ensure that people with MND and their families have quick and ready access to the supports they need. And this is why NDIS has prioritised people with MND to seek access for the supports that they need, with claims now being completed within 5 days. The NDI continues to work with the MND associations nationally to ensure that people have the flexible and timely supports, in particular AT, that they need.
Has expired. Senator Van, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. I'm sure everyone would join in welcoming Neil Danaher getting an AO last weekend. Can the Minister explain the importance of timely and flexible access to assistive technology and resources for those with MND?
Senator Reynolds.
Thank you, and again I thank Senator Van for the question. As we all know, the degenerative progression of MND is rapid and it is unrelenting. They call it the 1,000-day disease. So therefore, more flexible assistive technology options is absolutely essential, particularly access to loan equipment to ensure people with MND can get the AT that they need as soon as they need it. Now, I congratulate the MND associations in Australia who are leading the way to provide assistive technology loan libraries for their members. These schemes have been so successful that the NDIA last week released an RFI to test— Sorry, Mr President.
Senator Chisholm, I called you to order already. Senator Reynolds.
So on an issue like this, a bit of respect at least.
Order.
So these
Senator,
schemes—
Order on my— Order. Please resume your seat, Senator Reynolds. I've asked at the start of question time for people to restrain themselves, and I've also reminded senators that when I use their name, I expect them to remain silent for a while. Senator Reynolds.
Thank you. And I again congratulate the Australian MND associations for leading the way in this space to provide assistive technology loan libraries. The scheme has been so successful that the NDI is now looking to do that for children.
Expired. Senator Van, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Minister, what other resources are available to support people with MND and their families, including planning for end of life?
Senator Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr President. While the blue cornflower does symbolise hope for people with MND, the sad reality still is today that MND is a terminal illness. So it's important, therefore, for people with MND, their families and their carers to have access to sensitive information and helpful information about the journey that lies ahead. This is why
Order. Senator Chisholm. You're free to. I haven't called you to order, Senator Reynolds. You're free to continue.
This is why today I also announced the release of an end-of-life guide for people living with MND. Being able to plan ahead can reduce the stress for not only those with MND but their families and carers, to give them more control over the remainder of their lives. It is not something any of us like to think about, but this planning is important. And can I congratulate MND Australia and also Department of Social Services, who have provided the resources for this
Senator
sadly
Reynolds,
necessary guide.
time for the answer has expired. Senator Sterle.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Health, Senator Colbeck. Last week, the minister was asked why the Morrison government failed to secure an early agreement for Pfizer vaccines when it had the chance some 12 months ago. The minister took this on notice. So today, Minister, can you inform the Senate of that? Your answer, please.
Minister representing the Minister for Health and Aged Care, Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. Thanks, Senator Sterle, for the question. You're correct. I have taken the question on notice, and an answer to that question is being prepared and will be provided to the chamber.
Senator Sterle, a supplementary question. Order. Senator Sterle.
Thank you, Mr President. Can the minister confirm that by the time Australia took delivery of its first shipment of Pfizer, at least 44 other countries had already begun inoculating their citizens with Pfizer?
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. Mr President, Australians would recall that what occurred in this country is that we took a very deliberate approach to the rollout and the approval of vaccines. We didn't, as happened in many other countries, Mr President, have emergency approvals for the vaccine rollout. We waited and asked our approval agencies to fully approve the vaccines before we started administering them. We took advantage of the experience in previous countries, in other countries, to understand what was happening with the vaccines and for that data to be utilised as a part of our approval process, Mr President. So we took a process where Senator we could be able to say to the Australian people that we have undergone a full and thorough assessment of each of the vaccines before they were approved, Mr President. And I think that was an appropriate thing for us to do.
Senator Sterle, a final supplementary question.
Yes, I do. Thanks, Mr President. Minister, how many Pfizer doses—
Sorry, stop the clock. I can't hear Senator Sterle.
That's unusual, isn't it?
Senator Sterle.
Thank you, Mr President. How many Pfizer doses per week will the Commonwealth guarantee from today until the end of July 2021?
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. That information with respect to the number of doses available of both Pfizer and AstraZeneca was provided to state and territory premiers as a part of the National Cabinet meeting this morning, Mr President. President, I am happy to provide that information to the chamber, and I will come back to the chamber as soon as possible with that information, because that information hasn't been given to me off the back of the National Cabinet meeting this morning.
Senator Henderson.
Thank you very much, Mr President. My question is to the Minister for Senior Australians and Aged Care Services, Senator Colbeck. Can the minister outline to the Senate the Morrison government's commitment to ensuring more older Australians can live at home for longer?
The Minister for Senior Australians and Aged Care Services, Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President, and thank you to Senator Henderson for the question. Mr President, the Morrison government has a strong track record of supporting senior Australians, and it has been strengthened through our $17.7 billion investment in aged care announced in the budget. The government understands that many senior Australians want to live at home for longer, and we are boosting entry-level support services with an additional $112 million in investment in the Commonwealth Home Support Program. The latest allocation of funding will provide more access to a range of high-demand care services, including meals, transport, social support, respite, gardening and cleaning for older Australians, their families and for their carers, Mr President. The recent budget includes $6.5 billion to deliver an additional 80,000 home care packages and will reduce the wait list and give more seniors the opportunity to live in the comfort of their home for longer. As part of this allocation, 40,000 home care packages will be delivered in 21-22 and a further 40,000 in 22-23, which will make a total of 275,598 packages available to senior Australians by June 2023, Mr President. Our commitment and investment is already paying off for senior Australians. Between December 2019 and December 2020, home care packages increased by 19% to 173,495 packages. As of the 31st of May this year, Mr President, I'm happy to report that 189,369 people have access to a home care package. Mr President, this government is committed to showing senior Australians the care, dignity and respect they deserve.
Senator Henderson, a supplementary question.
Can the minister inform the Senate how senior Australians in rural and regional areas, including regional Victoria, will benefit from this record investment?
Senator Colbeck. Order. Senator
Thank you,
Colbeck,
Mr President.
Please. Senator O'Neill, I'm going to insist that the completely inappropriate interjections that are always in breach of standing orders don't start before the minister gets to their feet to answer a question. Senator Colbeck.
I thank Mr President.
Senator Polley.
The Morrison government's $17.7 billion investment in aged care includes more than $630 million to improve the access to quality aged care services for senior Australians in regional, rural and remote areas, including special needs groups. Mr President, this targeted investment will support communities identifying as being most in need. To ensure Commonwealth Home Support Program services remain accessible to all eligible senior Australians, providers are required to be as responsive as possible to requests from senior Australians and their carers for short-term or ongoing home support services. To access services, senior Australians, their family or carers can contact My Aged Care for advice to arrange an assessment of their aged care needs.
Senator Henderson, final supplementary question.
Can the minister outline the government's long-term plan for aged care through the recently announced $17.7 billion investment in the budget?
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President, and thank you, Senator Henderson, for your question. And you're right, the government recently handed down a $17.7 billion package to deliver once-in-a-generation reform of the aged care sector in response to the Royal Commission into aged care quality and safety's final report recommendations.
Senator O'Neill.
Mr President, this package announced in the budget is the largest investment in aged care and the largest response ever to a Royal Commission, Mr President.
Order.
The focus through our aged care reforms is to ensure senior Australians have access to high-quality and safe services, are empowered to have more control and their choice of their care arrangements, and are treated with the dignity and respect they deserve, Mr President. Every year, under a coalition government, home care packages are up, residential home care places are up, and every year
Senator
aged care
Colbeck,
funding
time for
is
the
up.
answer has expired. Senator Watt.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham. Can the Minister explain to Australians who, for the last 15 months, have been unable to visit dying loved ones overseas, have been stranded overseas and have been separated from their children, why the Prime Minister gets a leave pass to visit Cornwall and pay respects to his ancestors?
Order. The Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham.
Well, Mr President, well, if Senator Watt really thinks that was the purpose of the Prime Minister's visit, then he pays even less attention to what's going on than I thought was actually possible. Mr President, as the Prime Minister made clear, and indeed as I've referenced in this chamber, as Senator Payne has referenced in this chamber, you'd have thought Senator Watt might have been listening on any of those occasions. The Prime Minister, whilst at the G7, secured the Australia-UK free trade agreement.
Please resume your seat. I am not particularly annoyed at the lack of respect shown to me, but this place will become unmanageable if I call senators to order and they don't even have a modicum of respect for the standing orders. Senator Birmingham.
Mr President, the Prime Minister secured the Australia-UK Free Trade Agreement, of huge importance to Australian farmers, of huge importance to Australian businesses, of huge importance to ensuring that Australians continue to enjoy the opportunity of more jobs, of more economic growth, the sorts of things that our side of politics has delivered for them. Those opposite want to demean the opportunities created by trade and such agreements. They want to demean the opportunities created by the discussions the Prime Minister had, for example, with President Biden and Prime Minister Johnson about the opportunities to talk about the strategic challenges faced in our region and around the world. Very serious challenges, very important discussions that, of course, saw during that time the NATO countries meet and issue statements in relation to China and the challenges we face. The Prime Minister as well took the opportunity to engage in bilateral discussions with a number of his different counterparts. Already in this question time, if Senator Watt had been paying any attention, I referenced the fact that hydrogen agreements were signed during the recent trip with Germany, with Singapore, decarbonisation agreements signed. And this is why Senator Watt doesn't actually remember any of these things, because he doesn't shut up during the debate. He doesn't ever listen to any of it. Motormouth Murray over there just doesn't know when to be quiet, Mr President. He doesn't know when to be quiet. He won't pay any attention to the achievements. He won't pay any attention to what's accomplished.
Time for the answer has expired. Order. I repeat again, it's going to be a particularly long week if it is this noisy. Senator Watt.
Thank you, Mr President. Question. We've obviously touched a nerve.
Not mine, Senator Watt.
Not
You're
yours,
reflecting
Mr.
on
President.
me. No, Senator Watt.
Why did the Prime Minister pretend this was an unplanned side trip when we know that he had already commissioned the St Keverne Local History Society to research his family tree? The Prime Minister wouldn't be telling fibs now, would he?
Senator Birmingham.
Well, Mr President, I reject the premise of the question, but Mr President, you would think, in the midst of a global pandemic—
All right, that's Senator Birmingham, please. Senator Watt, I can't hear a word Senator Birmingham is saying with you screaming across the chamber like that. Senator Wong on a point of order.
Relevance in the midst of a global pandemic, maybe hanging out, going off on a side trip to visit your ancestors and climb
Senator Wong, please resume your seat, Senator Wong. That is not a point of order. Senator Birmingham.
Mr President, in the midst of a global pandemic, in the midst of a recession, you've got a situation where our government, this government, has helped to ensure Australia's health outcomes are some of the best in the world. Australia's economic outcomes are some of the best in the world. You'd think that those opposite might care about the jobs of Australians and want to ask questions about that. But no, they don't. You'd think they might care about the security of Australians and want to ask questions about that. But no, they don't. Do they come in from all of the different meetings and discussions the Prime Minister had when he was overseas and ask about any of those? No, they don't. They're just obsessed with the pettiness. They're obsessed with the smear. What they want to do, of course, is try to win the next election on smear, not policy. Well, we will stand on policy. We will stand on a record of record jobs, of economic growth, of keeping Australians safe, because they're the things that matter to Australians.
Order. Senator Wong, you used a term in reference to an individual that is unparliamentary. I ask you to withdraw. Thank you, Senator Wong. Senator Watt.
Thank you, Mr President. When Australia was on fire, Scott Morrison ran off to Hawaii. When his vaccine rollout fell apart, the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, went sightseeing in Cornwall, something no other Australian can do. Why is it that when the going gets tough, Mr Morrison goes on holiday?
Senator Henderson, I'm going to ask, though, order. I have asked order. I'm trying to call those on my right to order, Senator Watt. I have asked those on my left to respect the standing orders during answers. I will ask those on my right to respect the standing orders during questions. Senator Birmingham.
Mr President, it's the senator for smear over there and the opposition tactics completely laid bare. Their tactics for the next election are just all about smear. all about denigration. They're not going to bother bowling up any policies. They won't ever come clean on whether or not they'll implement lower taxes for Australians. Indeed, we know that taxes will end up being higher for Australians. They won't talk about the substantive issues that Australia faces. They will just engage in the type of dirt digging and smear that they think might get them a cheap headline. Well, on this side, we will continue to stand on our record. We are proud of the fact that Australia's economy is bigger now than it was pre-pandemic, and that we are the only economy in the advanced world to have achieved that outcome. We are proud of the fact that more Australians are in jobs today than was the case prior to the pandemic, and we were the first advanced economy in the world to achieve that. We are proud of the fact that most of those jobs coming back have gone to Australian women. We're proud to see full-time jobs coming back, and that lot don't seem to care.
Answer has expired. Senator Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question.
Senator Wong. Senator Hughes is on her feet. Senator Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Education and Youth, Senator Reynolds. Could the minister update the Senate on how the childcare system in Australia is supporting women's participation in the workforce?
The Minister representing the Minister for Education and Youth, Senator Reynolds.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President, and I thank Senator Hughes for the question and for your passion and commitment for the childcare sector. Supporting the economic security of women is a key and enduring priority for this Morrison government. This is why we are addressing the barriers to women's workforce participation through record childcare funding. This funding sees $10.3 billion being spent this year, including $9 billion to subsidise the fees set by childcare services. In 2018, the Morrison government overhauled the childcare system to introduce one childcare subsidy, offering more support for families with lower incomes who needed it, and also basing hours of subsidised care on family activities. 3 years on, Australian families remain the beneficiaries of this government's childcare policies. And in this year's budget, we went further. We announced an additional $1.7 billion to further help Australian families with more than one child, 5 and under, in those years that are the toughest on the hip pocket for families. By increasing the subsidy for families with a second or third child, 5 and under, 250,000 Australian families will be better off. This support will assist second income earners in a family, often women, who want to return to work and work additional hours. Women's workforce participation has reached a record high of 61.8% under this government, and that is something we are incredibly proud of. And we continue to put in place measures to support women who choose to work or to work more hours in the workforce.
Senator Hughes, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. President. What benefits will families and the broader economy experience from the Morrison government's childcare measures?
Senator Reynolds.
Thank you again, Mr. President, and thanks again, Senator Hughes. This one budget measure alone will support around 250,000 Australian families each and every year, and these are the families who need it the most. These families will benefit for up to $183 per week for their second child and any further child in the family under 5 and who is also in care. This means that these families will be better off by $2,260 per year. That is a great outcome for these families. We're also removing the annual cap on subsidies of $10,560 a year, which currently only applies to families earning over $189,390. This measure will benefit around 18,000 families and means no family will have an annual cap on their childcare subsidies. Our targeted measures tackle workforce disadvantage.
Senator Hughes, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can the minister outline to the Senate how the government's record childcare funding has delivered access to childcare services and supported economic opportunity since first elected?
Senator Reynolds.
Thank you very much again for the question. Today, over 280,000 more children are in childcare, and women's workforce participation has reached a record high, as I've said, of 61.8% in March of this year, which was up from 58.7% when Labor last left office. And let's never forget, when Labor were in government, fees went up 53%, including a one-year spike of 14.5%. And now, under Labor's so-called universal childcare, a family earning $500,000 would receive $50,000 of taxpayers' money for 2 children in full-time childcare. This universal childcare means they really don't care if parents are working to be eligible, and they don't really have faith in parents actually deciding what is right for their families. Again,
Order.
just remember,
Senator Reynolds,
under this government, we have kept—
has expired. Senator Reynolds was. Senator Farrell jumped beforehand, and the leader of the. Senator Birmingham.
I ask that further questions be placed on notice. Sorry.